Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, January 22nd to order. It is 6 p.m. And if I could get a roll call, please.
Chairwoman Amanda Denmark. Vice Chairman Charlie Wetmore.
Here.
Commissioner Michael Brock.
Here.
Commissioner Rich Delcourt.
Here.
Commissioner Lydia DePaul.
Here.
Commissioner Jim Flynn.
Here.
Commissioner Dan Grove.
Here.
Okay, notice regarding adjournment. The Planning Commission will not hear new items after 9:30 p.m. unless authorized by a majority vote of the Commission members present. Items which have not been heard before 9:30 p.m. may be continued to the next regular meeting or an additional meeting date as determined by the Commission members. Adoption of minutes. Do I have a motion or some changes to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none opposed, they pass. Now, election of officers. We're going to go Planning Commission Chair, Planning Commission Vice Chair, and then we also have to elect a third representative that is on the DRC. Do we have nominations for Chair?
I do. I'd like to nominate Charlie Wetmore as chairman for the Planning Commission.
I'd like to second it, even though it's not required.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations? I'm really okay if somebody else wants to do it. But okay. Seeing as there are no other nominations, all in favor of me as chair?
Aye.
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 Aye. And opposed? Seeing none. Now for nominations or people who might be interested in being vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Flynn to be vice chair.
Okay. Do we have anybody else that would be interested, out of fairness to all? Seeing none. All those in favor of Jim Flynn as vice chair?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Jim, you got to practice your R's, though. You're going to do
Promise,
this.
Charlie.
Now, Jim, for those of you commissioners who may not know, Jim actually was a planning commissioner up in the Great White North at one point. Where are we at? Okay, for the DRC, do we have people who are interested in being on the DRC? Really should be.
I'd like to nominate Lydia
Okay.
DePaul as the DRC representative.
I'll second.
Okay, did we have anybody else who was interested? Nothing against you, Lydia. I'm just going through the process. I think you'd be great. Okay, all those in favor of Lydia for Development Review Committee member?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Okay, we have our officers for the year. Do we have, Carrie, do we have any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay, seeing as there is no public comment, old business, we do not have any old business. New business, we have CVS Pharmacy, 2745, Certificate of Appropriateness, Highway Corridor Overlay, a request by Shelby Davignon of Booz Development Group, Inc. on behalf of CVS 7651 SC LLC for review of a Certificate of Appropriateness Highway Corridor Overlay application. The project consists of 11,286 square foot retail clinic and pharmacy with drive-through and associated infrastructure. The property is zoned Jones Estate PUD and consists of approximately 1.911 acres, identified by the tax map number in our agenda, located within the May River Crossing Master Plan, and falls within the Town of Bluffton Highway Corridor Overlay District. Charlotte. You're muted.
Thank you.
Yep.
Reminder,
Mhm.
let me share the screen. And on one moment. Thank you. You did indicate already what this project is. I want to show the vicinity map. You can see the property there in red. It is located on Evan Way between Highway 170 and May River Crossing. This road you see here. Here's an aerial map. The property is presently undeveloped.
Charlotte, sorry to interrupt, Charlotte. We're
Yes.
just seeing the cover page.
Actually,
Huh.
it looks like you can tab between pages yourself. I just discovered that on mine. See on the bottom left?
Yep. So we're
I
supposed to
think
do
you're
that.
doing that live presentation thing again, Charlotte.
Oh,
I'm
there,
sorry.
okay.
I think you're doing that live like PowerPoint thing again instead of like sharing your screen.
Okay,
Mhm.
one moment. I'm sorry. Let me. Okay, hold on one moment. Let me try this again. Hmm.
Charlie, I realize you could do it yourself, but for people who might be watching on the TV screen, we have to do it for them.
Understood, and they may be seeing Charlotte's screen, not ours. I'm not sure how that works.
Do you
Oh,
see
there we
this
go.
now? There we go. I'm sorry. Let me start over. So let me go back to the vicinity map. Again, the property is located at May River Crossing. The property is between South Carolina Highway 170, Evan Way, and May River Crossing. You see the property there in red. Here is an aerial view, presently undeveloped, wooded. Here's some other views of the property from Highway 170. You can see a fairly significant wooded buffer. And from Evan Way, you see the property here as well. This is May River Crossing on the left. The development plan that was approved back in August of 2024. Evan Way is here. There is one entrance from Evan Way, and there's also an entrance from May River Crossing. The pharmacy will have a drive-through, and this is the drive-through stacking lane here. The window is down in this corner here, and cars will exit from this location. And you can see there are two dumpsters located in the rear. The floor plan, I want to show you this. The floor plan includes the retail area, pharmacy area located in this corner here. Here is the drive-through window. The front elevation, there is a roll-up door that will allow access to bring goods into the store. And then there's a second-story mezzanine that will be used for storage. Here is the roof plan. It does include some mechanical equipment on top. And one of the concerns we have is to be certain that this mechanical equipment is screened appropriately. Here are the elevations. This is the left side elevation facing Evan Way. And there is that roll-up door that I mentioned to you. There will be electrical panels too as well on the front elevation. In the right or south elevation, the interior, here is the drive-through window. The corner here is chamfered so that cars can drive around. There will be another door here, emergency egress door. Some concerns that I do want to talk about is whether or not the roof line, the flat roof line, is appropriate, as well as the color. There are some black accents being used along the coping for the windows, and as well, for the windows. And black is an accent color that's permitted, but it does require approval of the Planning Commission. There is a brick base as well, which may be a bit too minimal, and so the commission may want to consider making this a bit higher. The window panel configuration is another thing that staff is a little bit concerned with, whether or not these X configuration in these panels is appropriate. And then there are some non-operational shutters, which is atypical of Bluffton. So again, there are some similar materials, colors on the other elevations as well. This is the elevation facing May River Crossing. And then this is the elevation that would be facing the Highway 170, and it's identified as the rear elevation. One of the concerns that staff had was that this elevation appeared to be not so much as the secondary frontage, but more of a true rear elevation, lacking windows, any transparency. And so the suggestion or the possibility for the commission to consider is whether or not the Highway 170 elevation should have some similarity to the May River Crossing elevation. And that's something that you may want to discuss. Here are the dumpster details. It will be brick, the color of the brick you see here, and then the steel doors would be a gray color. Here's the color palette proposed. One thing that was not identified is a shutter color, and perhaps the CVS representative can identify what that will be. As you review tonight's COFA, these are the criteria that you will apply, whether or not it is consistent with the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, the Development Agreement, the Concept Plan, and any other agreements, as well as the Applications Manual. In your consideration tonight, you can approve it as submitted, approve with conditions, or deny the application. And based on staff findings, we do have 4 conditions for your consideration. One is to demonstrate that all rooftop equipment will be screened from view, provide the lighting details to show that all light fixtures will be cut off luminaires to be consistent with ZDSO section 515.11E1. Provide a letter of approval from the master plan declarant responsible for the covenants and restrictions. And per the applications manual, any future signage will require a separate sign permit. As I indicated, there are certain things that would require determinations tonight, and that would be regarding the roof form, whether or not that mostly flat roof form would be appropriate, whether or not the black color used for the coping, the decorative shutters, and the window mullions is appropriate. 3, whether or not the non-operational shutters are appropriate for the front and right elevations. Number 4, determine whether or not the fiber cement panels, the X configuration is appropriate, as well as other elevations with the same window panel configuration. And I mentioned 5 as well, the brick base, whether or not it should be higher than is shown. Some additional architectural determinations, whether or not the rear elevation should appear similar to the front. That's making certain the Highway 170 elevation should be consistent with the May River Crossing elevation. The landscaped area, and I can go back to this, is there is a requirement that landscaping around the building should be at least 8 feet. And width, there is no landscaping on that 170 side. I'll show you that in just a moment. And then finally, whether or not LED lighting would be appropriate. The regulations were approved at a time before we had LED lighting, so that's a standard item. Let me go back again to the site plan, development plan, to show you the area along the drive-through. As you see here, it's showing striping rather than landscaping. And again, the requirement is to have 8 foot width of landscaping like you would see here on these other elevations. And that's not being shown. So the request of the commission is to determine whether or not the striping is appropriate or whether there should be some landscaping within this area. And so based on those conditions and determinations, that concludes my presentation, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions of Ms. Charlotte? Okay. I have to go back and forth because you're on screen too now, Dan. I don't know why you're way back there, but okay. Do we want to, just a reminder, the commission, this is an HCOD review. We've already approved the development plan on it. This is the visuals because it's along Highway 170. Do we want to hear from the developer? Would the developer's representative like to speak at this point in time?
Hey, good evening. This is Brian Morris with Foresight Group. I'm the civil engineer on the project. We also have Shelby with Bose Development and Richard Walker with Little as the architect. So we resubmitted this most recent submittal. I think from the previous comments, there was a lot of conversation on the architectural features on the building, the color scheme. So, you know, from the first submittal, I mean, it's basically a redo. So, I mean, we have modified the roof lines, we have modified the materials, the color scheme, and just wanted to kind of, you know, get an idea on this latest submittal. You know, how is the feel on this new color scheme and material, and kind of go through that portion, as well as some of the site civil components with the landscaping around the north side of the building and the dumpster. So do we want to hit the items up for consideration just one by one and kind of go through them, or how would you guys like to approach it?
Yeah, what I would say at this point is that's kind of a good presentation of where you've come to this point. But let's I want to go one by one through the commissioners and see what any concerns or you know, positives and negatives about the project, and we can bring you in either during or after that. Okay?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to go the way it appears on my screen, guys. No preference, but Rich, you're first up. Would you like to address the project?
Yeah, just a couple things that I'd like to see. I would like to see some more better architectural detail on the 170 side, the one that is, quote, the rear facing. It's kind of plain. I like what Charlotte did in her next slide, which is slide 14, which shows we're looking for more of that than what exists right now. So that would be one. And then the only other one would be, yeah, I'd love to see the landscaping on the 170 side. I know it's the drive-through, and I know you've got some space considerations for people wanting to bail out, but I really don't think we want to give up our 8-foot spacing right there. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Flynn.
I too would like to reiterate the rear and the front as far as having them look similar. It's been told in the past that this is what we were looking for, and that's something that I think is important, and I hope the developer knows that. So that's one. That's the most important one, I think, really right now, and as well as the rooftop equipment being screened, because you can't see. I mean, you can look at it, but you can't see how in depth that is going to be screened. And yeah, I mean, I can't, and I don't think we have any prints that show that. So that's it for me.
Okay. And commissioners who've spoken already, you're talking that frontage on 170 to make it look more like the front of a building as opposed to the back of a building, right? Is that what we're hearing?
That's
Yes.
correct from Rich.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Mike? You're muted, sir. There you go.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Reiterate what Rich was saying. I agree with the side that's facing 170 and the landscaping as well along that foundation. Like to see that come back. revised with addressing those concerns that the town has.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Lydia DePaul.
I would echo those same concerns. A couple other questions just to think about. I agreed with staff's comments on raising the brick base some. I think with it essentially being a 2-story building that's kind of expressed as 1 story, it would very much help to have more than just a couple inches, a little over a foot maybe at the base. I don't know what you guys think about the flat roof. I also don't know what staff, maybe Charlotte could help answer this, but my understanding of the definition of a pediment is that it has a slope to it. I don't know if we use that interchangeably with the town for a parapet. But to me, this isn't really a pediment so much. Charlotte, I don't know if you have any insight into how that's been applied.
You're muted, Charlotte. We all got to get used to it again.
There we go. I'm sorry. Yeah, the requirement typically is to have a slope of pediment, but we have seen other areas where we do have flat roofs. So it's not that it's not allowed. That's just a decision that the Planning Commission will have to make.
For whatever it's worth, I think we've had a lot of other folks come in and ask that they have at least 412 pitch on some of the roofs. So I would consider that. I do think just from a consistency perspective, it would be good to take a look at the windows and fenestration. It seems like we have maybe 3 different kind of schemes going on. It looks like there's maybe 8 light transoms over some spandrel glass that sort of mimics the storefront at the entry, which is different than the other kind of higher in the wall windows that are 4 light windows. So I think any of them could be okay, but it's a little bit odd to have so many different grid schemes on the same building. I do question, again, as staff did too, the use of the X detailing. That feels pretty agrarian to me for a building that's intended to be low country and is not an agrarian function. I do think that the another thing just to consider, and maybe this could be part of the brick detailing, if we went to the, I guess you're calling it the front elevation, which is that one. I think that the board and batten and the siding are in the same wall plane, which is kind of odd for low country architecture. Normally, you know, it's okay to have the board and batten above the siding, but usually to change a vertical material in the same wall plane is usually there's at least some relief in those 2 masses, and kind of the way that that brick base is jogging all in the same plane between those 2 materials is odd also. And then I think staff had made the comment too that the fixed shutters with awnings over them is a little bit of an unusual presentation, and maybe we could instead look at some Bahama shutters to add some of that, especially on the 170 facing elevation. These very small fixed shutters with a X panel below and then a awning is just a little bit confusing. And then I would also ask that we, I guess, just ask the commission, are we all okay that the meters are what they're facing the street? It's not 170, but it is the main drag coming in with no like landscape buffer. I don't know if there's a way to get some taller plantings in front of them or some type of a screen wall or something. And then the section for the rooftop equipment would be great.
Okay. Commissioner Dan Grove.
Yeah, everything Lydia just hit on, I was tending to agree with. I know from past experience, we've had to do line of sight analysis for rooftop equipment. So if there's something along those lines that would show, hey, from the public right of way, the line of sight to the proposed maximum height of those rooftop units, and they won't they'll fall under either the roof line or some type of screen system. And then the black color, you just don't see, or I haven't utilized that a lot down here in the Low Country with what I've been involved in. I know Charleston green is a very dark green color that's been utilized in the past to get that black look, but also to give it, a little bit of color depending on how the light's hitting it. Yeah, that'll be all.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. I muted myself. Yeah, my concerns along the lines of what I've heard tonight. The first one I had on my list, that brick base, I think that can solve the X issue. And I think, Lydia, you were going along that line too. If those X panels are out and it's a higher brick base, that'll accomplish a look we're looking for. I like the idea Lydia had on the shutters. The vegetative buffer, guys, you're probably getting sick of hearing me say this, but the applicant hasn't heard me say this. You just hear me say it on every project. If you can't put an 8-foot vegetative buffer in, shrink the building or figure it out. We had most recently the gas station, the fuel gas station, reconfigured their car wash to make sure they met that 8-foot buffer requirement. So it's a requirement. I think if we make an exception, we're going to start making exceptions for everyone, and we're not going to have that vegetation that we want around the buildings. The LED lighting is something that we do on everything. Highway 170 frontage needs to look more like the front of a building. One thing I don't think I've heard yet is the dumpsters. I personally don't like the location of them. I do like the brickwork that's been done, but they need vegetation around them so they can't be seen from Highway 170. Because if this is supposed to look like a front elevation and those dumpsters are sitting out there in front of the building to the side, that just isn't the look we're going for. So some type of like an ivy or some cypress tree, Leland cypress, something like that, that can cover the brick area would be good. And then I'm the HVAC guy. That's what I do in real life. And we don't know the height of the parapet. We don't know the height or type of we know they're RTUs. You've got a rack up near 170 where you're putting split systems and a mini split, but we don't know the heights. We don't know if they're in that line of sight. Our UDO calls for the fact that they cannot be above the top of the parapet, and we're not seeing any of that information. It might be that you can fix that by doing a little bit of what Commissioner Hall was saying about with the 412 roof. You might be able to mask some of the height of the AC units. Where do we want to go from here, guys? Do we want to hear the applicant maybe address a couple of these issues? Or do we think this is something we need to have circled back and brought to us, or do we want to try and see if we can move it on with conditions that staff attends to? Looking for a general feel from commission.
This is Rich. I would like to hear from the applicant to see if they can address these concerns to be dealt with by staff, but just my point of view.
Okay.
Charlie,
Richard,
this is Jim. I agree. So
Okay.
Okay. Richard, do you want to start with the architectural, and then Brian can talk about the landscape, the 8 feet that we need on the rear?
Sure. You guys can take it any way you like. I think all of us had various comments. I would expect that you could address all of the comments in whatever order seems right for you.
Okay. Hi, it's Richard. I'm the architect. I'll start with the building design and address some of the comments that I can, at least. Number one, seeming to be topped on everybody's list was screening of the RTUs. These RTUs are fully screened by the existing parapet line shown. So there is no line of sight issue.
Well, you say that, but we don't have that information. We don't have the height of the parapet. We don't have the make and model of the RTUs. We don't have any of that. So we will not assume that that is correct based on word. We need to see it in writing.
What do you need to see specifically in writing?
Okay, how high is the parapet top from the roof? That's not on any of the plans that were submitted. That's number one. How high is the platform that's holding the mini split condenser or the split condensers? How high are the RTUs that are going on the unit, on the roof? You know, those are things that if we have the model number of the HVAC units, if we have the dimensions of the AC units, we can make that determination. But you telling us,
well, but that's pretty far down the road, don't
enough,
you think? I mean, right now we're in conceptual design phase. To have a model number of an RTU at this point is still going to be presumptive until we get engineers.
Right now you're in Highway Corridor Overlay District, where we look at the visual of the outside of the building, and we approve it or we deny it. And one of the requirements we have is that those HVAC units cannot exceed the height of the screening or of the building. Now, if you go to install them and they're higher than that parapet, you will not get C of O. And if we don't make sure that it's right at this point in the equation, you could have a building built and not be able to get C of O.
Okay.
I would just add that a building section is definitely needed too, because even if you end up swapping out the units, if you at least get the height correct and can show us where the roof is relative to the parapet and where the platform is relative to the parapet and all of that, it can't just be plan views. We need to see it in section.
Okay. I mean, Richard, we could at least provide that. The only thing we would not know is obviously the model numbers of the units yet until we go actually into design.
But what you will know is you've got the size of the building, you know the CFMs that are needed in that building, so you know the total tonnage. So you can work backwards from that. I mean, I know you've got manual J's and manual S's sitting out there on these buildings, and you know what's going in them.
Okay. I'll get with the engineers, see what they can come up with for that. But we're going to operate under the presumption that we'll have these fully screened no matter what, but we'll provide the building section to show it. And then if we need to, we can produce model numbers and curb detail for the RTUs. Secondly would be the Highway 170. That faces the pharmacy of the building. The one concern we've shared with DRC as well about that end being, because that end is the pharmacy end, is there's a certain level of extra security required there. So CVS allow transparent glass in those areas because of that makes it a high security risk for the pharmacy itself. Doesn't really matter the location. We've seen a lot of break-ins, and they've had a lot of unfortunate crime in that area. So that's the challenge we're working with. It doesn't mean we can't enhance that elevation, but cleared glass is probably not going to be. There's probably not going to be an option there on that particular elevation. So I'm hoping we can, as Commission believe, we can come up with something that still mimics that where we don't have to make use of clear glass on that elevation.
Anyone want to speak up to that? I don't want to monopolize this.
Well, we're open to suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, Lydia kind of hit on the use, or the town did too, the use of like the Bahama shutters. Now I'll look to the other commissioners to kind of weigh in. But, you know, utilizing those on the other elevations and on this, even if there was no glass behind, but the Bahama shutter would give the illusion that it matches the other elevations. Yeah, that is it would something that I think could be looked at as an option. I'll let the other commissioners weigh in on that idea.
Okay.
They're more architectural savvy than I would be.
Yeah, that is definitely something we could look at. And we can expand on those details. The next one, raising of the brick base. I know when we met with DRC, one of the concerns they had with the previous submittal was that our brick base they felt was too tall. I'm guessing we feel like the pendulum swung too far the other direction. I was simply trying to mimic a more residential feel on that in relation to using the clapboard siding, because usually you don't see a tall brick base. Usually it's fairly low foundation wise.
I would just add that here, typically houses down here are at least like 3 feet out of the ground. So even at a residential scale, we're used to seeing like a 30 to 42 inch brick base around a building.
Well, that's similar to what we had before. But again, we were told bring it down.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, can we look at the previous elevation? Can we put that up or no? That's not an option.
Charlotte, you're muted, but do we have that in the packet?
and it's okay. We don't really need to. I can raise it. I just want to make sure we're not going to ping pong this back and forth.
Right.
If what you're saying is another 8 inches, of course, 8 inches, 12 inches, is that what I'm getting? To maybe 1'4" higher.
I don't know that totally solves it for me, at least. I think it could. I'm struggling a little bit that your windows are so high in the elevation, which I think was potentially a comment from DRC too, which I understand that you have products and things that you need to be lower, but there's not much that's giving pedestrian scale on this. The fact that those are at almost 13 feet is tough. So I don't know.
He was, I just shared the first rendition that came in on the elevations. If you needed that for reference, Richard.
Okay, yeah, there you see the taller base.
See, I think that brick with the windows that you have now versus the windows that are in that one would look good to me, but I defer to Lydia because she's really the expert on this.
I think raising would help. I think it could. I'm not going to tell you how to design the building. Y'all can, I'm not here to solve it, just to kind of share our concerns. But I didn't know if potentially there's a way to use brick to, or if you want to jog the plan slightly to get a break between your materials.
I think we need to stick to what's actually been submitted in the packet and not be bringing up past submittals, just because what you're voting on is what's been submitted currently.
Well, we would have to make it a condition to change it, and then we could say equivalent to what was in the first. And we can have him resubmit that. But yeah, I agree, Carrie.
Commissioner Wetmore, do we have any perspective about why the applicant thinks we wanted it lower? Who said that? Was it a DRC member? Was it staff? Do we know what the reason was for that?
I truly don't know. Do we know, staff? Charlotte?
That was, yes, and that was a staff comment because we felt that it was a little bit too tall. So there was a mention that it kind of went maybe a little too far in the other direction. So, somewhere in between, we'd be fine with.
How tall was it originally? Do we know?
It was just shown. I don't know the height.
Brian, could you share that one more time?
I don't think it shows in that submittal.
Okay.
It looked roughly around 4
apologize.
feet.
What do you think it is, Richard?
It's either 4 feet or 4'8".
I'm guessing. I have some ideas just looking at it as to how to bring the brick up. If commission would be amicable, I'd like to try to, I'd still like to vary it. I think it's important for the language of the building to maintain some some varied articulation along the facade. One of the challenges in designing other CVSs is it can start to look rather monotonous if we're just running one base at one height around the entire building. It starts to, I like to use that as a feature to help break up some of the massing. That for me helps bring it down more to that human scale that I think we're all searching for on this. So I'd like to play with that along with, again, if you don't like the sort of the X-braced panels it's a language of barn architecture. So the vernacular is there with Low Country, but if it's not fitting with what you're accustomed to seeing in Bluffton, that's understandable. I was trying to shoot for that language. So if that doesn't work, we could infill that with brick underneath those windows, and that again would help vary some of the color palette, texture, and materials to give it more of a rich feel and continue to add interest to those areas where we can't just punch through with glass. Trying to think other things.
The vegetative buffer, the dumpster screening.
Yeah, those are going to be civil. I'm going to let Brian Morse address those comments.
And I will tell you on what you're talking about on the brick, and I'm just one of 6 in this meeting, commissioners, but one of the things we try to do is we try to keep the mass and scale from getting too big. So when I hear you talk about varying it some to break up that mass, I like what I'm hearing. Commission, if we do push this on with conditions, I think we need to have one of the commissioners kind of review with staff the changes that come in. If we don't, if we make them come back next month, we all look at it, but that's my thought on it.
I would just like to add on the brick. I think it's good to vary the heights of it. I would just ask that if we're doing that, please don't do it in the same wall plane. You got to give us at least like a 6-inch jog or something so that it's not just stepping in the same plane.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Richard, is that something we can?
I'm thinking about how best to stepping of 6 inches, like projecting out from the face.
Like what you have for the main entrance, the fact that mass has a higher water table is good. Where it's not as successful is what you are calling the front side elevation. So on this one, the left side where you have the doors entering the building, how that water table is higher because that element is projecting off the face, I believe. Hopefully.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That's appropriate to have the material be a different height. But when you go to your front elevation where that entire side of the building is one continuous wall plane, it's odd for the foundation material to step like that without having some type of
I see
change
what you're
in the plane of the wall in terms of the massing.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, I tried to accommodate that by using a different coursing method where it goes from a soldier course on top down to a regular running bond so that it makes the bottom trim board look like a true skirt board where it's just board and batten that comes down on the lower side. That would be the front side elevation.
I think you can still do that as long as we can get some difference between the wall plane between those two materials.
The other way with it and actually stepping up there, bringing the brick up to the bottom line of the shutter. You see that bottom panel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be nice.
That's what I'm thinking, and then possibly repeating that in the other areas in similar conditions. Again, we would still have a stagger, but we would have a variation in the elevation, but uniformity in the overall application of these veneers.
The only other thing I see in my notes as to what we discussed architecturally would be possible screening somehow of the meters up front, whether through a service yard or vegetative of some type. I think Lydia brought that up.
Right.
'Cause
I'll have
I
Brian
get it. We don't
look at
want them
that.
to pull into the parking lot and see the meters, you know?
Yeah, and we have a row of needlepoint holly between the building and the sidewalk along that 8-foot planting strip in front of that meter along that side.
Okay, we should see it in landscaping then, if we pull that up.
Yep.
And I guess the other thing I would want to ask about is there seemed to be some challenge to the use of black
Yes.
as a trim component. I did see it in the UDO images from the Old Town reference, the Old Town. So that's, I did see the use of black there, and that
I think with
I
your color
can,
palette, if you're open to bronze or something still dark, but just
like
slightly
a
off.
dark bronze.
Yeah, it could be very dark, but just a slight softness to it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of true harsh black down here. It's either a Charleston green.
Yeah,
or
that's why I
bronze
went with a
or-
matte black. So it would be nothing shiny, nothing that stark. But I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah, we've used something a little more subtle, and I could definitely.
Yeah,
I think a dark
we can do
bronze
that.
would work really well. Or work just as well as the
Yes.
actual black. So that will be an easy change then.
As long as it's not CVS red, I'm happy.
No. Oh, come on.
Neon.
I agree. I don't like those either.
I can't show you option B that has a standing seam roof that's all red. No, we tried to tone that down. And again, with the muted color palette, we were really hoping that we found something that character-wise really blends with the community there. So
Got it.
all that's to say, we're really trying.
Yeah, we are.
Really, and
We thought you were going to be really happy with this building. to be
personally, I'm
honest.
really
a little
excited
shocked.
about this design because it is quite a departure from what CVS would normally approve, and so I'm thrilled to get the opportunity to actually do this. And so we'll look at these comments, and
I was just going to say, please understand, we're not saying throw the whole design out. There's some really good elements to this, but we just like fine tuning it.
no doubt,
Understand.
understandable.
Do we want to talk about the landscaping related?
Yes. Around the
Sure.
dumpster or? Okay.
All right, Brian, I'll yield the floor to you for those.
Gotcha. Yeah, so let me see. On the planning strip on the 170 side, let's see if I can share my site plan. May zoom in just a little bit better here. So our north curb line is really being set based on the tree root zones off the buffer, the 60-foot buffer. So we're keeping the curb outside of that, and we're kind of, to the south, we've also got the tree save area in this island here that we're trying to save. So we've got the drive aisle, we've got the sidewalk, we've got the 8-foot planting strip up against the south side, we've got it on the east side. Where we're running into trouble is on this north side. Typically on these CVS drive-throughs, they're looking for, at a minimum, 10-foot primary drive-through lane with a 10-foot bypass bailout lane. We also had, with the dumpster and compactor location, the service vehicles that pick those up are going to have to, travel through that area as well. So that's what we're running into with that north side landscape up against the building. What I would, if we've got to provide landscaping on that north side, what I would suggest is would it be possible to go with something like 3.5 feet off the building and plant within that area so that we could maintain it at least a minimum of 20 foot, so that we could have 10 foot for primary drive-through and 10 foot for bypass around that side of the building.
Commissioners, I'm going to let you speak up to your opinions on that. Y'all know my opinion, but again,
Yeah, my only question would be, is the bypass lane more of a once for on CVS's end than a need? If we can get that buffer by, foregoing the bypass lane, I understand if, the pharmacy, it may take a while. You may get some frustrated patrons, but at the same time, that falls, on people like us to make sure we plan out our day and we're not in a rush. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an operational item that CVS reviews as they're going through their site approval process. So anything that's less than that 20 feet on that side, as far as pavement to be able to operate their drive-through, they would have to review and approve anything that's less than that prototypical distance or width. So I would propose 3.5 and see, would like to propose that, see if that's something that the town can work with us on. If it has to be the 8 foot, we would have to go back to CVS for consideration on that to see if they would approve it
Mr.
from an
Morris,
operational standpoint.
Mr. Morris, this is Commissioner Delcor. Have you had situations where those exceptions have been agreed to before?
I can't think of one off the top of my head. But I can't say for sure. I mean, it's a possibility.
What is planned for, is it just sod between the curb and the front property line? I'm sorry, the 170 side.
The 170?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think, let me see if I can pull landscape. Yeah, so between the curb and the buffer, we have sod. We've got a couple of trees up in this area. And then you've got the existing 60-foot buffer beyond that.
I don't know if you guys would be amenable to this, but if you were to do a 3.5 foot planting bed and then potentially plant the 170 side of the drive to get us to 8 feet, where we would still be achieving screening the building from, I know there is a buffer, but within your development area, screening the building beyond the buffer, having some of it on either side of the driveway, I could potentially be open to. I don't know how the other commissioners feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could probably be done. I think what we may run into is with the root zones of the other trees that are in that area. It looks like this little area here, you could probably do some plantings. If you try to do, maybe a couple more over here. Of course, if you try to plant it in the root zone, you may end up impacting some of the trees that are in the buffer. So there's kind of a little bit of pockets here and here that we could probably add some additional plantings plus the 3.5 foot plantings up against the building if we add that.
okay, that's something we can consider when a motion is made.
Okay.
I tend to be more rigid than the rest of the commissioners. I always feel like you can make your building smaller if you can't fit what's needed, but some good conversation there.
Yeah, Charlie, I'll just hit on, man, what Lydia brought up. I think you're kind of setting precedent, and I'd be amenable to, but I'd want to ask CVS the question first, if they would be amenable to, foregoing the bypass lane so we can stay consistent with the buffer. We're not being asked to make any special concessions to kind of make this work. I'd rather that question be asked first of CVS, and if they can, prove there's any type of hardship there, to make that concession, then it'd be something for us to think about in more
Well,
detail.
To Commissioner Whitmore's point, they also could keep the bypass lane and just make the building smaller. If the bypass lane is the most important part of the design.
And I, Charlie, Commissioner Wetmore, agree. I don't like making exceptions. So I would be with Commissioner Grove with the first one, which is, let's see if they get an agreement from CVS before we give up our 8-foot buffer.
If I can, let me, if we think about a 3-foot planting strip, what is actually can grow in a 3-foot planting strip? What are we offering there by giving 3 feet? The other thing, it looks like there's a lot of grading on the other side of the curb between the property line and the curb. So I appreciate that you're saying that you're protecting those roots, but you're putting several feet on top of those roots. So when you put anything over 6 inches over a root, you're jeopardizing the environment of those trees. And it looks like, some of those dash lines are well with where you're having 3 feet of fill. So I'm not buying that those roots are very protected. Plus you have quite a slope on there, and I don't know how that grass is going to grow if it's shaded on top of the fact that it's sloped. So I'm not sure how that grass is going to do on that side of the curb. There's a lot of options in a strip that you can do that's vertical, that's up the wall, that's called a green wall. I'm not going to design that for you. I'm going to tell you what to do, but there's options that you can do there in that space. If it's a little bit more than 3 feet, I guess go to CVS and see what they say and come back to us and give us some options. But you're not going to be able to do a lot in 3 feet. You've got the 8 foot along the side that is called the left elevation, I believe. And Mr. Paul was talking about concern about the electrical and the utilities on that side. Needlepoint Holly, the mature height is 10 to 15 feet and the width is 10 feet. And that's not necessarily what you're showing in that bed. So I'm not even sure if, that run of Needlepoint Holly is going to work in that location. So I kind of question that. And with the architecture, you kind of want to change up what you're putting in that bed based on what the elevation is of the building. One run of the same plant is just, I don't think it corresponds with what the elevation is offering on that side of the building. So
would you propose an alternate planting?
There's other plant materials other than just one plant material.
Like burying it through there, kind of cluster.
Right. To give you height variation. Number one, to screen that those utilities, but then also that corresponds with the elevation of the building. So yeah, just one plant material is not, I don't think that's doing justice for what you're trying to accomplish along that planting bed.
Okay. I can get with my landscape design team and talk with them a little bit about that, see if they have an alternative that can be proposed in those areas.
Commissioners, let's try and get a sense of the temperature of comfort level of the commission as to, do we want to try and tackle this with a bunch of conditions and pass it on to staff, or do we want to see it again I know there's a tension here. We really could use a pharmacy out there, but we also want to make sure it's done right. So I'm curious as to the temperature of the room.
Commissioner Wetmore, this is Commissioner Delcorn. I'm not comfortable at this point just making a list of conditions because there's some things that Charlotte brought up that I don't think we've even addressed yet, or the applicant hasn't addressed. So there's a lot on this plate. So I'd be a little bit concerned about trying to write down all these conditions and have it reviewed with staff.
And just to be clear, if the room's going to go that way, which I'm fine, whichever way we go as a whole, we need to be as clear as we can when they leave the room tonight as to what we expect to see back before us. So go ahead. Any other commissioners give us a feel for the room?
This is Jim Flynn. Just wanted to also reiterate that I think going along with something you've said always in the past, Charlie, and I am going to say it's something that if CVS has policies, maybe they need to look at the site and say that they do need to reduce the square footage of the property. Therefore, everybody makes out. They get their 20-foot in the back. We get the plantings. It sounds like, I mean, you've heard this over and over again, and now we're just trying to put a round peg in a square hole, and it's not going to work. I'm again agreeing that the fact that we should have them come back, but I also really seriously consider, you know, see what CBS says about the back as far as the 20-foot. But I think they should definitely be reconsidering maybe the size or reshaping it. I don't know.
I agree. I think there's the 8-foot planting bed is a potential redesign for part of the building or the site, depending on which way they want to go about it to get the 8 feet. And then on top of the other architectural comments, I think it's a little bit much to handle as conditions.
Yeah, I like that, Charlie. Just seems like a lot. There's been a lot discussed, getting into some detail, architectural details, some civil details. And I think the temperature of the room is that there's amenable or agreeable ways to accomplish what we're looking for, and to come back, it would be on the right path to, even if it were to get approved with conditions, that condition list would be easier to tackle for town staff and for the planning commission itself.
Okay. Yeah, we've got, I mean, Mike, if you want to speak up too, but we've got the temperature of the room. Now, for the applicant at this point in time, there are a couple choices. You can bring it to vote. I think you have an indication of where it's going to go. We have two choices: approve or deny, based on what we see here. You can put it on hold and come back to us. And if you do put it on hold, we'll go through that list one more time, just so everything's crystal clear as to what we're hoping to see changed and improved. I don't remember I think we have the ability as a commission to table it, but that puts it under our control. So I would not suggest that as an applicant. But it is your decision as to whether you want us to consider it for a vote, or if you want to withdraw at this point and bring it back.
Yes.
And just so the applicant is aware, the deadline for February's meeting is the 29th of January, so that's next Wednesday. After that, it would be February 26th as a deadline for the March 26th meeting.
I'm sorry, you said February 26th for the March meeting?
Correct.
Thank you.
Is this something where we could do some, like we've done in the past, where like 1 or 2 commission members could have an interim meeting to review progress, so that hopefully the next time there's not an abundance of comments?
I would strongly suggest that if you're open to it, Lydia,
Yes.
and I am open to it as well on the HVAC side. I'm not trying to be a pain in the butt, but we make it very clear that we're not giving the C of O if it's visible. So.
Understood. No,
okay.
Lydia, if that, I would love that idea.
Mhm.
That way, at least when, I know it's a quick turnaround, only a week for the next
Yes.
one, but at least you could get feedback before then so that if you submit in February, you're hopefully checking the box and moving on.
Yes, I need that to happen.
Okay, so is it your decision to withdraw?
Please, yes.
Okay, and before you go, let's just, my notes that I have here. And commissioners, speak up if I'm getting any of this wrong. I've got, increase the height of the brick base, probably 2.5 to 3 feet tall. Not quite that 4 to 5 foot tall. The shutters, consider the shutter change that a couple of commissioners mentioned. That 8-foot vegetative buffer, we have not made exceptions in other projects. We've made them change them. So see if there's, come back to us with a solution on that. The HVAC, just making sure that's going to fit the way it needs to. As a side note, the LED lighting, that's just the way our code is written. We always approve it. The Highway 170 frontage needs to look more like the front of a building, or at least not like the back of a building. Heavy dumpster screening of landscaping. And Commission, am I missing anything?
We did
I
talk,
think
Go ahead.
Richard probably has it in his notes, but what the point Lydia made just about with the height of that brick base, being consistent on the plane of whatever face the building it's on, but getting the variation in that to provide some depth.
Yeah, and the consider changing from black on the top rail. That was the other note I had.
Yep.
Commissioner
Okay.
Wetmore,
Sorry, God.
now Commissioner Wetmore, I would ask Charlotte, are there any things on the list that she shared with us initially that we haven't addressed with the applicant?
Yeah, maybe pull that list back up, Charlotte.
Can I just make a comment real fast just before it passes to the next item? But I just, and Dan, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to make sure that we get the language correct and it's not an application withdrawal, but a table.
Pause.
Because if it's a withdrawal, they'll have to start the process all over again.
Okay, thank you for that. Is it considered a table from that end of it, or is it considered a, how do we do it legally? So,
They would have to request to table the item.
okay. Do we have to vote on the tabling?
No.
Okay. You want to change that to an official request to table?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, Charlotte, hold this up.
Let's see. The shutters, the configurations between the shutters and the windows. So
Yeah.
item 4.
I think Lydia had a suggestion on that, like a Bahama shutter, correct?
Yes, I think that was Charlotte's suggestion. I was
Oh,
just
sorry.
echoing it. Yeah.
And I
then,
believe everything else has been addressed.
yeah,
I would just ask that you guys also consider the grids and the windows, just figuring out a way to keep them consistent between the different types of glass.
okay.
All right.
I think we're all set with this. Sorry we gave you a ton of homework, but I think it's going to be great when it's done. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Now I'm trying to find my, here we are.
Hey, Dan, maybe reach out to the applicants because I kind of kicked them out before to tell them to hop back on.
For Culvers.
Yeah.
We'll wait until they get in because I need to read this next part with them in.
Mr. Randy Tiemann and Wendy Martin are both here.
Okay, there was like a
representing the
Fred and a Tom or something before.
Right. Fred and Tom are the owners, so I'm sure that they want to be involved, and probably the civil
Here
engineer,
comes
William.
Tom.
Okay, they're coming.
Somebody texted him. Hey, guys.
Hey, we were watching on
Okay.
YouTube.
There we go. Okay, item number 2 on the agenda of new business is Culvers of Bluffton Development Plan. A request by William Heinz of Kimberly Horn on behalf of Rolling Doe Properties, LLC, for approval of a preliminary development plan. The project consists of a 4,400 square foot quick service restaurant with associated parking and infrastructure. The property is zoned Buckwalter PUD and consists of approximately 1.52 acres identified by the tax map and the number in the agenda, and located at the southeast corner of Buckwalter Place Boulevard and Innovation Drive within the Buckwalter Place Master Plan. Mr. Frazier.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a preliminary development plan application for Culvers at Bluffton. Next slide, please. A request by William Heinz of Kimberly Horn for approval of a preliminary development plan. The applicant proposes a single-story, 4,400 square foot quick service restaurant with associated infrastructure and utilities. It is on a 1.52 acre property zone Buckwalter PUD, located within the Buckwalter Place Master Plan, and specifically located in the southeast corner of Buckwalter Place Boulevard at Innovation Drive. Next slide shows the location of the property. It is the southeast corner of the intersection of Buckwalter Place and Innovation Drive, right at the roundabout within Buckwalter Place. Next slide is an aerial of the same location. Just south of it is the Putt-Putt Golf. To its west is a health facility. To the north is a park. And to the east is the parking lot for the grocery store. That's fine. Next slide. The site plan provides 63 parking spaces with 61 on-site parking spaces, and I'll show that in the slide coming up. And it also includes 2 off-site adjacent parking spaces. There is queuing spaces as well as order waiting spaces that I will point out. They are not included in the parking space requirement. Staff comments on the preliminary development plan were reviewed in November at the Development Review Committee meeting, and the applicant resubmitted on December 19, 2024. Next slide, please. This is the Buckwalter Master Plan, Buckwalter Place Master Plan. I'm sorry, to the left is the whole plan. To the right is a close-up of the location. The property is where you see the 2 Cs in the building. Staff considers the layout here to be conforming with what is shown on the master plan. That's been consistent with how development plans have come in with this master plan for the other developments within the Buckwalter Place master plan. If we can go to the next slide. This is the site plan. We also have a utility plan and drainage plan that are not a part of these slides, but we can bring them up if you want to look at them. If we can go to the next slide, which is actually a close-up. Thank you. I mentioned queuing already. I believe we have a total of 18 queuing spaces prior to the pay window. Following the pay window is an additional 10, what the applicant refers to as order waiting spaces. Their narrative points out that this is part of their business model. I'll let the applicant describe that in further detail. Within the parking area for in-dining and employees, we've got 61 spaces on site. To your lower left of the site plan, there are 2 on-street places on Innovation Drive. They are, there you go. If you can see the cursor, they're parallel parking spaces that are basically to the left of the proposed building. With their original submittal, they had their dumpster was actually it sits south of the building. It was actually oriented so that the garbage truck would access it from the parking aisle. That would be the same parking aisle off of Innovation Drive that would get you over to the grocery store and an additional leasable space. We had asked that they relocate the parking or the dumpster. I'm sorry. What they did is they reoriented it. They included in their narrative that it's obvious that the garbage trucks would conflict with queuing cars, but they said that the garbage truck pickup would be coordinated so that it is not during business hours. It also provides a shorter distance from the building to the dumpster for employees. We had suggested that it be in what is the southeast corner. Well, they've got stormwater detention proposed for that area. They also have stormwater detention proposed to the north of the patio. If you can see the patio, which is just north of the building, in that area there is where they're proposing additional stormwater facility. When they come in with a final landscape plan and it's required at final. It's not required right now. You're not reviewing it for approval. But what we will do is we will ask that the landscape plan provides landscape screening to help hide the what's called the order waiting parking spaces that are sitting there after the pay. If we can go to the next slide. Planning Commission shall consider the criteria set forth in section 310.3A of the UDO in assessing an application for a development plan. Next slide, please. These are the review criteria that you're all familiar with. Next slide. Planning Commission has the authority to take the following action. You can approve the application as submitted by the applicant, approve the application with conditions, table the application, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant. And next slide, please. Town staff finds that the requirements of section 310.3A of the UDO are met and recommends that the Planning Commission approve the application as submitted. We have a suggested motion there. We can, following slide is a question slide. We can go back to the site plan if you have any questions for me. As I mentioned earlier, the applicant is available to provide anything that and answer any questions or provide a summary of what they're proposing. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Commission, let's go ahead. If you're all okay with it, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant. I am very curious as to whether this is a Culver's that will also have frozen custard. So.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm William Heinz. I'm with Kimley Horn, civil engineer on the project. I'm going to kick it over to Fred Coles and Tom Zintel. Okay, yeah. And let them kind of introduce Culver's, and they'll be kind of the owners of this one here.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Fred. Been with Culver's for 23 years, so hopefully we know what we're talking about here. Basically, have any of you ever been to a Culver's? Yeah, a couple? All right. So anyways, we're fast casual. We're pretty much fast food, but we like to think we're better than that. We take a little bit more time. We cook to order. We have a drive-through. I know that's the biggest topic of discussion here, so I'll kind of talk about the drive-through. Basically, you wait in line, you get to the speaker. We take your order. We have a double drive-through, so we're working that all the time. It'll always be on. You get to the window. Our goal in getting you from that speaker to the window is under 50 seconds. So generally we do pretty well at that. And then you pay at the window, and then we ask you to pull forward. And so you basically pull all the way forward. And as people get their food and leave, everybody pulls forward and kind of follows suit. They don't just stay in their spot. And we have signage and stuff that says, please pull forward. And we also, our runners, the people that are running food out, we'll walk up to cars and be like, hey, would you mind pulling forward so everybody can, get out of the window there. And this whole process from taking your order to getting your food, the goal is 5 minutes. We do a really good job of meeting that goal. Culver's as a system does a good job. So that's pretty much the drive-through in a nutshell. You know, they're not sitting there forever. It's not, we don't back up like crazy. It's a very fast, efficient process. So, and then just Culver's in general, we're more of a, like, we want to be part of the community. We're not just like a restaurant that, oh, we're going to Culver's or whatever. We hold fundraisers all the time. We work with the community. This year alone, or last year, I think we wrote out, I did 40,000 in donations just to, you know, local groups, schools, churches, all that kind of, you know, just small groups in the community. So that's, you know, that's our goal. We're not just trying to come in here and be just another restaurant. We're coming in to be part of Bluffton, you know, and for people to be like, oh yeah, we love Culver's, like they're really nice in our community. So that's kind of what we are. I'll let Tom introduce himself, and he might have some stuff to say.
Wow, my name's Tom. I'm with Culver's for over 20 years myself. I will be relocating from Wisconsin to, South Carolina, Bluffton area. But yeah, I mean, we're quick service hospitality. That's our number one thing is you're more than customers, you're our guests. We want to be there for everybody. We want to be the place people choose to come to.
But we'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have. Whatever you got, hopefully we can answer anything on that. And if it's design related, it's all William.
Got it. Are y'all up in Wisconsin right now?
Yes.
Okay. Can you take the snow back that we just got?
We're trying. It's here right now. But we also have salt and snow plows. So.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. Well, let's do this, commissioners. Let's go around the room like we did last time. I'm just going by the way the cameras have reoriented themselves. Lydia, you're up first.
I just had one question, which is, since you guys need the extra parking, it sounded like for the queuing, or, for after you get your order, would it be possible for that extra parking beyond what's required to be pervious?
Yeah, I think that's something we could look into, if that's a concern from the staff and the commission.
I think just from reading the report that was from the original review, it sounded like they had asked y'all to remove the extra spaces, then you clarified that they're required for your business model. So I think or at least I'm okay with that. I just would love to see for, the watershed and everything else, if we could get those to be pervious would be excellent, or at least 50%. But that's all I had.
That's a really good point. Y'all may or may not know down here, but one of the things we do is we try and keep the runoff from hitting the local rivers because there's salt water, and it can ruin oysters, it can ruin other things. And by adding pervious parking, that helps with the runoff. So if it's not the drive-through spots, because those might be more heavily traveled, maybe it's some of the spots in the lot. Up next, Dan, you're up next.
No questions or comments really at this time.
Okay, Mr. Commissioner Brock, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. I agree with Lydia's comment about the pervious parking. There's a lot in there, and there's a lot of opportunity there to have pervious parking. My other concern is the comment that Charlotte made about, I'm sorry, not Charlotte, that Dan made about screening and landscape. And that's just it's a corner lot, and there's a lot of parking, a lot of drive-through right there on both the driveway aisles and Innovation Drive and Buckwalter Boulevard. Landscaping is going to be very important to me in viewing this. Obviously, Dan made the comment about it as well. So when we see this, I think that's something really would like to make sure you guys have focused on as well. That's all I've got, Mr. Whitmore.
Thank you. Rich Delcor.
Commissioner DePaul stole my thing. I'd love to see some more purpose parking there, so support her suggestion, and same with Commissioner Brock. Well, definitely would love to see some landscaping in that corner.
Okay. Commissioner Flynn.
And I will also fourth for that one. I agree with all the commissioners that anytime we can do something to improve that, it's probably the best thing we can do for the town.
Okay, thank you. And to add to that, obviously, I'm going to agree with that as well. And do look at with staff at heavy vegetation on that circle. You know, make it look nice. Make it look nice would be my suggestion. The other thing that came up as myself and a couple others were looking at it to the. And I don't know, Dan, if you can show this or not with a mouse pointer, but there's a crosswalk. If you were to come out how the building's oriented, kind of towards the hardware store and take a left, there's a crosswalk there that crosses over to where the mini golf has been built. That crosswalk, look, I know this may or may not be your responsibility, but I'm bringing it up. That crosswalk, there is so much traffic that goes there. Look at getting with the POA that's responsible for that development, whether it's you guys putting it in, them, or combination, but really some signage and a better painted crosswalk, because I anticipate you're going to have a lot of people walking back and forth between the bowling alley, the mini golf, and your restaurant. I would be lying if I didn't tell you I was concerned about the traffic, and with something of this volume being put interior to a development as opposed to exterior, but it fits. So hopefully we're making the right decision with this. And that is all I had. Commissioners, anybody want to make a motion? Have additional conversation?
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the Culver's Bluffton preliminary development plan application as submitted.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, folks. And let me get my agenda back up. Any items for discussion, commissioners or staff? Please, everybody, stay safe out there as we try and wait this out to melt so we can get back to work. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
And do we have a second? Second. Somebody said it. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion is adjourned. Meeting is adjourned.
And congratulations to our new chairman, vice chairman, and DOC rep. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.